Okay. Well, hello everybody. This is the Insights channel. Steve here again. I'm going to read to you today something from my book, Eden Insights. This is taken from chapter 99, and it's called The Revolt. And it's about the descendants of Cain and how evil they were. So it says here, verse 1. After Cain had gone down to the land of dark soil, and his children had multiplied therein, there was one of them whose name was Genun, son of Lamech, the blind, who slew Cain. That's not his name in the Bible. In the Bible he's has a different name. His name is Jubal in the Bible. It's because this version, the Lost Books, Adam and Eve, it was in another language for a while. Many of these books have been translated from Hebrew, then to Greek, then to Latin, sometimes in Slavonic, and then into English, stuff like that. So therefore they pick up some names along the way. But the essence of the book is the same. So, comment 1. It's also mentioned in the book of Jasher, there was indeed this Lamech, the blind, who slew his great-great-great-great-grandfather Cain by accident with a bow, thinking that Cain, whom he vaguely could see in the distance, was a wild animal coming towards him, was as with his youngest son Tubal-Cain. Comment 2. See my book Jasher Insights, Book 1, to read the amazing details of the sad story where Lamech the blind not only accidentally killed his great-great-great-great-great-grandfather Cain, but in his semi-blindness accidentally smote his youngest son on the head so hard that he also died. And Lamech's two wives, Adullah and Zillah, forsook him for a season because of this. It's also mentioned in the Bible. This Lamech the blind was not the same as Lamech as the son of Methuselah, who was born some 3 generations later, or in 874 years after creation, according to King James Bible time charts. Genun is also known as Jubal in the Bible. Verse 2. But as to this Genun, or Jubal, look at this statement here. Satan came into him in his childhood. Well, that doesn't surprise me, because if you know the origin of Cain, sadly, Cain was fathered by Satan himself. That's how the seed of Satan came into this world. And later, of course, it was multiplied by the fallen angels. The seed of Satan started there in the Garden of Eden. Adam and Eve didn't get kicked out of the Garden of Eden for eating an apple, I'll tell you right now. Something far more serious than that. And of course you might say, yeah, well, if that's true, why would Adam allow it? Good point. But there again, these beings can put on quite a display, and since they're much more powerful than we are, I'll leave the rest up to your imagination. And I think sadly that sort of thing started by Satan and the fallen angels has been happening ever since, under certain conditions, certain rituals, etc. Very sad story that has happened through time. But anyway, this guy, this relative, this Lamech the blind son, Satan came into him in his childhood. Think of that. I mean, he possessed him. And he made sundry trumpets and horns, and strings and instruments and cymbals and psalteries and lyres, harps and flutes. This sounds like that Pan character. And he played on them at all times and every hour. Came in unto him in childhood. Sounds like Satan had possessed Jubal or Genun since he was a child. And this description is later mirrored in a description of Pan the satyr, or half-goat, half-man creature, always playing a flute and enticing people through music. Well, that doesn't surprise me, because if you know anything about the fallen angels and the demons and the devils, it's easier for them to get into a creature that's not human, like half-human, something like a chimera. And that's a whole study in itself. How do the chimeras come into being? Well, if you study about the fallen angels in Genesis 6, and what they eventually started doing, mixing with animals and all kinds of DNA and stuff, then you begin to see that chimeras was a very big possibility. And when you study history, you will find that all those great empires from Egypt onwards, what were the symbols they used for their empire? What was their national symbols? Lots of them were chimeras. Where did they get that idea from? Just from mythology? I don't think so. They were based on reality, based on events involving the fallen angels and Satan messing around with the DNA of all kinds of things, not just human women, but with animals and all kinds of stuff. Because fallen angels are shapeshifters. That's what they really are. So that's how this all came about, unfortunately. And so you have here Lamech, who was a great grandson of Cain. Well, his son got possessed by Satan in childhood, and Satan inspired him to make all these instruments. And this was actually the downfall of mankind. You'll find in this chapter here that because of exactly this, Satan inspiring lots of instruments and lots of music, and then bringing other spirits along like Bacchus and things for people to get drunk all the time. This is where mankind went totally astray, in vanity and perversion and drunkenness and violence and murder. That's where it all started. That's why it's called the Revolt. Revolt against God and against order, law and order. So as for this Ganoon, or as we know, Jubal in the Bible, Satan came into him in his childhood, and he made sundry trumpets and horns and string instruments, cymbals and psalteries and lyres and harps and flutes, and he played on them at all times and every hour. Wow. This is not surprising, as his father was Lamech the blind, who slew Cain, his great-great-great-grandfather, was cursed 7 times worse than Cain because of it. Genesis 4:15. The Lord said unto him, Therefore whosoever slays Cain, vengeance shall be taken on him 7-fold. The Lord set a mark upon Cain, lest any finding him should kill him. It was indeed in the time of the sons of Lamech the blind that great debauchery began on the face of the earth in the early days, or around 450 years after creation, and 1200 years before the great flood. There's an interesting extra detail from those early times. The evil that began by the sons of Cain in around 450 after creation, and even the greater evil of the fallen angels coming into the daughters of Cain in the days of Jared, or around 650 after creation, a little bit later, was somewhat held back for around 243 years during the time of Enoch, from 743 until his translation to heaven in 987 after creation. He had a lot of power over the kings of the earth, according to the Apocryphal book of Jasher. The kings of the earth were afraid of Enoch, as he had power over fallen angels. Here, get my book, Enoch Insights, and Jasher Insights. And according to the book of Enoch itself, he rebuked the fallen angels to their faces for their crimes. He was made king of kings by 120 kings on the earth, according to the book of Jasher. Talking about Enoch. After having finished his testimony, Enoch was translated, or taken up to heaven by God himself in the year 987 after creation. His son Methuselah continued for another 200 years, instructing the kings of the earth not to go astray, as many of the children of Cain had done. Finally, everyone rejected Methuselah's witness from God in around 1187 after creation, or something like about 500 years before the flood, or maybe a bit less than that, 480 years before the flood. From that point on, most of the children of Seth came down from the spiritual mountain, joined the sons of Cain, and the world descended into chaos and lawlessness. See my books Enoch Insights and Jasher Insights for the complete story. And also this book is very valuable, Eden Insights, very valuable. I knew from the Bible that Jubal was a maker of instruments, but I didn't realize that in his case the instruments were made under the inspiration of Satan himself, using music to hypnotize people into some sort of trance. Of course, it's not to say that musical instruments are evil in themselves, but it's how they're used and with what spirit, either good or bad, that really matters. Genesis 4:21. And his brother's name was Jabal, or Jabal. He was a father of all the play stringed instruments, lyres and pipes. It is mentioned in the Bible that Satan was created with musical instruments embedded in his body. Ezekiel 28:13. Thou hast been in Eden, the garden of God. Every precious stone was thy covering, sardius, topaz, and the diamond, beryl, onyx, and jasper, sapphire, emerald, and carbuncle, and gold. The workmanship of thy tabrets and thy pipes was prepared in thee in the day thou wast created. Amazing statement about Satan. Verse 3. And when he played on them, Satan came into them, so that from amongst them were heard beautiful and sweet sounds that ravished the heart. And then he gathered companies upon companies to play on them. And when they played, it pleased well the children of Cain, who inflamed themselves with sin among themselves, and burnt as with fire, with lust it means, while Satan inflamed their hearts one with another. I won't say what that's talking about. And increased lust among them. Satan also taught Genoon to bring strong drink out of corn, and this Genoon used to bring together companies upon companies in drinking houses. There's your first pubs. And brought into their hands all manner of fruits and flowers, and they drank together. Sounds like another powerful evil spirit or demon was introduced to mankind, Bacchus, the demon god of drinking. More importantly, addictions. This is very early on after creation, about 450 years after creation. Thus did this Genoon multiply sin exceedingly. He also acted with pride, and taught the children of Cain to commit all manner of the grossest wickedness, which they knew not, and put them up to manifold doings which they knew not before. Then Satan, when he saw that they yielded to Genoon, and hearkened to him and everything he told them, rejoiced greatly, increased Genoon's understanding, until he took iron, and with it he made weapons of war. See where it all started? Comment 16. As far as the Bible says, it was not Jabal who invented the weapons of war, but his brother Tubal-Cain. Genesis 4:22. And Zillah, she also bare Tubal-Cain, the forger of every cutting instrument of brass and iron, and the sister Tubal-Cain was Neammah. That's Genesis 4:22. Comment 17. Tubal-Cain is mentioned as being the first blacksmith. He was a descendant of Cain and son of Lamech the blind and Zillah. Comment 18. Here we have a situation which shows us serious dangers of compromising with evil. It proved to be a bad idea for the sons of Seth to intermarry with the children of Cain the murderer, and eventually led to their subsequent complete downfall in the centuries to come, except for Methuselah, Lamech, the good one, and Noah. Comment 19. The righteous sons of Seth? There were very few good sons of Seth. Most of their descendants died in a great flood, wherein, according to the Bible, only 8 souls were saved. Noah, his 3 sons, and their 3 wives. All the rest had compromised and blatantly become very evil. Noah and his sons warned the world for 120 years while they were building the ark of God. This happened starting 1538 years after creation, and the great flood eventually came in 1658 after creation. According to the book of Joshua 2:17, and Lamech the son of Methuselah became related to Cainan by marriage, and he took his 2 daughters for wives. And Ada conceived and bare a son to Lamech, called his name Jabal. She conceived again and bare a son to Lamech, and she called his name Jabal. Comment 20. Canaan was the son of Enos, which was the son of Seth, was the son of Adam. Canaan was born 325 years after creation, according to the King James Version of the biblical time charts. Wow. Verse 8. Then when they were drunk, hatred and murder increased among them. One man used violence against another to teach him evil, taking his children and defiling them before him. Think of that. Think of that. How disgusting it was before the flood, with Satan's influence directly. Demon-possessed people, man. Comment 21. How sick and depraved the world became in early days after creation, or from the 3rd century after creation, started by the sons of Cain. And when men saw they were overcome, saw others that were not overpowered, those who were beaten came to Genoon, took refuge with him, and he made them his confederates. And then sin increased among them greatly, until a man married his own sister, or daughter, or mother, and others, or the daughter of his father's sister. So there was no more distinction of relationship, and they no longer knew what iniquity is, but did wickedly. And the earth was defiled with sin, and they angered God the judge who created them. Isn't that how the world's going these days? Getting more and more. There are no rules, no absolutes, anything goes. instead of protecting those who are innocent and protecting those who need protection. Golly, we live in a sick planet, especially among the elite. But Ganoon gathered together companies upon companies that played on horns and all other instruments we've already mentioned at the foot of the holy mountain, and he did so in order that the children of Seth, who were on the holy mountain, should hear it. Yeah, well, this story of the lost books Adam and Eve is based on the idea that some were living on top of a mountain, and they were the good guys, and all the bad guys, sons of Cain, were living in the valley, and there was a gulf between the two. Well, that's the idea. I see it more as like a spiritual gulf rather than as a physical. But eventually all the ones on the mountain came down, compromised, and joined the children of Cain, apart from 3 persons. Amazing. Amazing stuff. Very interesting story. Comment 22. Satan had total control in the above situation with the sons of Cain. Now he wanted to use them to entice the righteous sons of Seth to come down from their mountainous abode, far above them, using musical instruments, to seduce them into coming down from their righteous mountain. But when the children of Seth heard the noise, they wondered and came by companies and stood at the top of the mountain to look at those below, and they did thus a whole year. And when at the end of that year Ganoon saw that they were being won over to him, little by little, Satan entered into him and taught him to make dye stuffs for garments and diverse patterns, made them understand how to dye crimson and purple and whatnot. Comment 23. We see that sometime later in the generation of Jared, fallen angels came to the earth to pollute the earth and its wicked ways even more. And the son of Cain, who wrought all this, and shone in beauty and gorgeous apparel, gathered together at the foot of the mountain. It sounds like Sodom and Gomorrah, how they used to dress, where it says a man wears more colourful garments than a woman. It's disgusting. At the foot of the mountain in splendour, with horns and gorgeous dresses, horse races, committing all manner of abominations. Meanwhile, the children of Seth, who were on the holy mountain, prayed and praised God in the place of the hosts of angels who had fallen. Wherefore God had called them angels, because he rejoiced over them greatly. I don't know what that means. There is this false doctrine called the children of Seth that in about a couple of centuries after Christ, they tried to come up with this doctrine that no, it wasn't fallen angels that came down and made love with the women on earth. No, it was the children of Seth, and it's all nonsense. Now it's been proved to be absolute nonsense. But it was a doctrine that existed around about 300 after Christ. The children of Seth, as they were supposed to be so good because they were up on the mountain. Might have got it from this very story, but the truth is that it's not true. There was no righteous son of Seth because they all ended up compromising. Only 3 survived. One of them was Noah, Methuselah, and Lamech. Comment 24. God would certainly not call his children angels, as it says in the scriptures that God puts no trust in his angels. Why? Probably because 1/3 of them betrayed him. See the next chapter concerning the false doctrine of the unrighteous children of Seth, being the ones who came down to the licentious daughters of Cain, and not fallen angels, a doctrine created by the Catholic Church around the 3rd or 4th century AD. Job 4:18. Behold, he puts no trust in his servants, and charges angels with folly. Revelation 12:9. And the great dragon was cast out, that old serpent called the devil and Satan, deceives the whole world. He was cast out into the earth. The angels were cast out with him. Wow. Verse 16. But after this they no longer kept his commandments, nor held by the promise he had made to their fathers. But they relaxed from their fasting and praying, and from the counsel of Jared their father, and they kept on gathering together at the top of the mountain to look upon the children of Cain from morning until evening, and upon what they did, upon their beautiful dresses and ornaments. Yeah, well, that's the worst thing you can do, is look what everyone else is doing when you're supposed to be doing something else. They're supposed to be obeying God, reading their Bibles. Well, it didn't happen back then. No, maybe that was the problem. They didn't have something to read. They didn't have something to hold on to. They didn't have the word of God back then, unfortunately. Then the children of Cain looked up from below, saw the children of Seth standing in troops on the top of the mountain, and they called for them to come down to them. But the children of Seth said unto them from above, We don't know the way. Then Ganoon the son of Lamech heard them say they did not know the way, and he besought himself how he might bring them down. And then Satan appeared to him by night, saying, There is no way for them to come down from the mountain which they dwell. But when they come tomorrow, say to them, come ye to the western side of the mountain. There you'll find the way of a stream of water that comes down to the foot of the mountain between two hills. Come down that way to us. Then, when it was day, Ganun blew the horns and beat the drums below the mountain, as he was wont. The children of Seth heard it and came as they used to do. And then Ganun said to them from down below, Go to the western side of the mountain, there you'll find the way to come down. And when the children of Seth heard these words from him, they went back into the cave to Jared to tell him all they had heard. And then when Jared heard it, he was grieved, for he knew that they would transgress his counsel. After this, 100 men of the children of Seth gathered together and said among themselves, Come, let us go down to the children of Cain, see what they do, enjoy ourselves with them. But when Jared heard this of the 100 men, his very soul was moved and his heart was grieved. He then arose with great fervour and stood in the midst of them and adjured them by the blood of Abel the just, Let not one of you go down from this holy and pure mountain, in which our fathers have ordered us to dwell. But when Jared saw they did not receive his words, he said unto them, O my good and innocent holy children, know that when once you go down from this holy mountain, God will not allow you to return again to it. He again adjured them, saying, I adjure by the death of our father Adam, by the blood of Abel, of Seth, of Enos, Cainan, and Mahalaleel, to hearken to me, not to go down from this holy mountain. For the moment you leave it, you will be bereft of life and mercy, and you shall no longer be called children of God, but children of the devil. But they would not hearken to his words. Enoch at that time was already grown up, and in his zeal for God he arose and said, Hear me, O ye sons of Seth, small and great. When you transgress the commandment of our fathers and go down from this holy mountain, you shall not come up hither again forever. But they arose up against Enoch, would not hearken to his words, went down from the holy mountain. And when they looked at the daughters of Cain, at their beautiful figures, and their hands and feet dyed with colour, tattooed and ornaments on their faces, the fire of sin was kindled in them. And Satan made them look up most beautiful before the sons of Seth, as he also made the sons of Seth appear of the fairest in the eyes of the daughters of Cain. So the daughters of Cain lusted after the sons of Seth like ravenous beasts, and the sons of Seth after the daughters of Cain, so they committed abomination with them. But after they had thus fallen into this defilement, they returned by the way they had come and tried to ascend the holy mountain, but they could not, because the stones of that holy mountain were fire flashing before them, by reason of which they could not go up again. God was angry with them and repented of them, because they had come down from glory, and had thereby lost or forsaken their own purity or innocence, or fallen to the defilement of sin. And then God sent his word to Jared, saying, These thy children whom thou didst call my children, behold, they transgressed my commandment, gone down to the abode of perdition and of sin. Send a message to those that are left, they may not go down and be lost. Then Jared wept before the Lord, and asked for mercy and forgiveness. But he wished his soul might depart from his body, rather than hear these words from God about the going down of his children from the holy mountain. But he followed God's order, preached unto them not to go down from that holy mountain, not to hold intercourse with the children of Cain. But he heeded not his message, would not obey his counsel. Very sad chapter, very sad end there. So many people backslid. All the house of Seth, basically. Over a period of time, some hundreds of years. Well, I hope you found that very interesting about the revolt, or when all the so-called righteous sons of Adam, through Seth, sons of Seth, mostly went astray, went down and joined the sons of Cain, became iniquitous, and that's why God brought on the flood, destroyed them all, except for Noah and his wife and 3 sons and his 3 wives. Amazing story. Very important to know the Bible and apocryphal books like these ones, the lost books, Adam and Eve. Do get my book, Eden Insights, which covers this really well, of what happened in the far past. And the lost books, Adam and Eve, I believe they were written around about the time the book Enoch was written. I think those are the oldest books in the world, from pre-flood times, and they were first written down in ancient languages before the flood, and in Hebrew. I think the original language called the book of Joshua was Hebrew, and then passed down through Noah, and eventually was translated into Greek and Latin, other languages, and eventually into English. But the old manuscripts were from pre-flood times, like Book of Enoch, and the Lost Books, Adam and Eve. Well, thanks for listening. Do get my Insights books. There are now 8 Insights books, and 2 other books I have on a supernatural and paranormal, Out of the Bottomless Pit, 1 and 2. And I also have Enoch Insights. You've got this one, Eden Insights. You've got Esdras Insights, that's a new one. Jasher Insights, Jubilees Insights, and the Testament of 12 Patriarchs Insights. That's a fascinating book too. And the sons of Jacob, all their adventures. Well, thanks for listening, and I would encourage people to get my Insights books and my 2 books on the paranormal, Out of the Bottomless Pit, 1 and 2. Thanks for listening. Have a great day.